Hi everyone, welcome to Woolen Spinning. My name is Rachel and this is episode 34. I can't believe we're at 134. I just need to move some things around. We're having a really weird day here. So we have a ton of snow outside. We got snow overnight. We got about a foot. And for the greater Metro Vancouver area, I'm located just outside of Vancouver, British Columbia in Canada. And for this part of the world, I know I am from Canada. It's actually not that typical that we get this much snow here. And the whole city kind of just shuts down because we don't have good snow removal equipment. We have a lot of hills, a lot of bridges, a lot of transit. And so the whole sort of area has just come to a grinding halt this week. So Monday, the kids had a snow day because the school was caked in ice because it had gotten cold. We got in snow. It had melted a little bit and then it resulted in ice. And then today, all of sort of the greater Vancouver area is off of school. The kids are in the other room. They've been outside all morning. I'm all flushed and pink because I've been outside. And we cleared all of the neighbors' driveways. We were all out there together, got everybody's driveways and walkways cleared, but there's still a ton of snow and more to come. So it's been very strange. We're definitely into the crux of winter here. So welcome to the show. Welcome to the live stream. It is Wednesday, January 15th. And I just want to say thank you so much to everybody who's going to be able to spend some time here with us today. I know for those locally, you're probably home with kids on a snow day. So if you aren't catching the live stream live because you were stuck doing all of that, I hope that you got out from under the snow and were able to get yourselves out if you needed to go out. Hopefully you were able to stay home and take a day off if you didn't have to go to work. Yeah, we live in a kind of an odd part of the world because of that. We're just not sort of a snowy climate. We're usually mostly sort of between 6 and 8 degrees in the winter up to about 11 to 14. That's sort of where we run average. So being minus 10, minus 12 is actually very unusual for us. And a lot of people here, not only do they not know how to drive in the snow, they're not comfortable driving in the snow, they also don't have the proper gear and the proper clothing. So it's actually quite challenging even for kids. So yeah. I'm glad you guys, Tessa, I'm glad your SFU is closed and she gets to be at her wheel. She is actually just about half an hour from me. Tessa and I are glorified neighbors. It's so good to see you guys. Frozen Calgary, minus 30, yes. It's all in Celsius, of course, because Canada is metric. Minus 36 from the prairies. I know my friend Julia, the kid's godmother, they live in Strathmore, Alberta, and she was saying it was up to minus 40 last night with the wind chill. So I know it's hard. I'm from a more northern part of Canada myself, and I am very thankful that we live in the part of Canada that we do that doesn't get all of that crazy ice and snow. And it is a good opportunity to break out all the woolens. That's true, Tessa, because often here it's too hot to wear all the woolens. Oh, and bless her heart, the newspaper lady is walking up somebody else's driveway. She's out there delivering the newspaper. The part of the problem is it's supposed to start snowing here again in a couple of hours, so we're sort of not sure what the next couple of days are going to look like. I've actually decided that 2020 for me is not going to start until February 1st. I have decided that 2020 has not actually started yet because it has been such a disjointed month thus far. It's not been bad. It's just so disjointed that I haven't been able to actually get started on anything. I haven't been able to do anything. And I feel like I'm just going from one thing to the next because the kids are either off school or they're home, or we've been sick, or it's just been a really odd start to the year. Anyhow, it's good to see you guys. We don't have a super full show today, which is kind of nice to be able to say. We aren't going to have a full hour live stream either because I've got the kids home and it's not really fair to them. And I didn't want to reschedule because now that the show is weekly, there isn't really anywhere to reschedule it to. So I thought we'll still do the show and we'll just have a slightly shorter show than usual. So it'll be probably closer to 45 minutes rather than over an hour and 15 like we tend to get to. So in today's show, I have a teeny tiny little bit of housekeeping just to remind people of some things. And I've got a really fast breed and color study because Sera was able to get some modeled photos of her cowl. So I wanted to share those. I do have a big finished object, which is given away in the title of today's show. And I have a couple of new spins that I wanted to just very quickly share on, and that'll probably take us to the end of the show. If we have time, I might talk very briefly about my Copenhagen cardigan, just because I've made some good progress on it. And I'm actually hoping that today, because of being home, I'm actually hoping that I can divide for the yoke today and divide for the sleeves and the body of the cardigan, which would be kind of fun. So before we run the show credits, I just wanted to mention that anybody who's a part of the Attentive Spinner tier on Patreon, please hop onto the doodle and sign up if you'd like to be a part of Woolen Spinning Radio. If those dates for January didn't work for you, don't worry. There will be more dates being posted very soon for February. And I will send a reminder when I post those. For the giveaway for January, for this month, you just need to enter in the January episode thread. And you just need to let us know what you learned in 2019. And I've been really enjoying reading everybody's learnings. That's been really cool. And we will announce the winner from that thread. That's open to everybody in the Ravelry group. We will announce the winner of that come the beginning of February, the first show in February. So that's what we will do. All right, let's run the show credits and we'll get into the show. I will help you with it as soon as I'm done.
No, come now.
I can't. I'm live streaming. Look, there's all these people here. Do you want to come and say hi? Are you going to come say hi? So everybody say hi to Nora. She wants another piece of pizza. We had leftover pizza from the other night, so you can look in the fridge and get a piece.
I already did, but I put it in the toaster.
Okay,
already.
so press toast and then press start. Get James to help you.
Press this
Toast.
one and then that one.
Okay. Press start. Yeah, that's right. Press toast and then start. Get James to help you. Okay, I'm gonna do the show.
Okay. Jenny.
All right, sorry about that, you guys. I'm sure we're gonna have a little bit of interruption today. I think the kids, they've been amazing. They've been out in the snow all morning, and I just really appreciate you guys being so patient. Oh, Becca, I feel for you. So James had his first skating. It's part of the grade 2 curriculum here for the kids to learn how to skate because it's considered a life skill. And he had his first session yesterday. And we go skating as a family sometimes. And he's been up on skates before, but he was just so excited. Anyways, yesterday was a very long day because once he got on the ice, he was having such a blast. And then, to come home and wind down from that. So there was the build up of going. So the night before he was super excited and super chatty and didn't really want to go to bed. And then last night was like the come down. So he's quite tired today. Yeah, she is big now. She's almost 6. I mean, because her birthday's towards the beginning of the year. It's in March. And I think she's going to be taller than me. She's just built a little bit differently than me. So I'm the shortest one in my family. I'm 5'5". And I could see her being more like 5'6", 5'7". Thanks, Diane. Yeah, she is pretty adorable. She has a really lovely personality. Like she's just a really lovely kid. And it's actually been a really great thing to watch her at school, kind of coming into her own. And the other little girls really like her and want to be friends with her. And it's been neat watching her navigate how to help the other little girls play together and play as one big group. It's been really cool. And I hope that she doesn't lose that. All right, breed and color studies. So this was Sera. This is the back of Sera's head. So Sera is one of our very active members in the Ravelry group, and I'm actually not sure if she's here today. I haven't seen her username yet. She is still claiming my handspun. Yeah, Nora used to take my handspun all the time, and she still does. So Sarah's a very active member of our Patreon community, and I'm not sure. I don't think she's here today. I know that she hasn't been feeling really super well. So she had shared quite extensively about her project that she'd been working on and all the different yarns. And I think I've shared about the yarns that she created twice on the podcast. I think I shared the yarns for the first time, and then the second time I shared the cowl, but it was pinned out. And so I had asked her in the Slack channel if she had any photos of her actually wearing the cowl. And she said, oh yeah, totally. I'll snap some photos next time I'm outside. So she did, which was awesome. So this is her gorgeous face here and her wearing the cowl, and it just looks amazing. I just love the electric blue. So the electric blue, it's right here in the graffiti interrupted braid, but you really see it come out in the graffiti braid, the control braid that we've used for our braid and color study this time around. And you can really see in the cowl how it just pops. And that bright electric blue that's there in the middle of the photo, how it just comes through. And it's really eye-catching. So well done, Katrina, for the that color and that dye. And then what Sera did was she took the leftovers from the cowl and she used them in the shift along toque, which is the red toque that is also pictured here. So I think that was sort of a happy extension of her project and of being able to use up the yarn. So very, very well done, Sera. And yeah, it's nice to put a face to the name. Absolutely. Yeah. We have such a diverse community with so many people that it's really cool to see. That's why I love Woolen Spinning Radio, because you hear people's voices and you can hear sort of their personality coming through. But I think it's really cool when we get to see what people look like, because I know you guys all know what I look like, but it's really fun to be able to see what each other looks like. So that's why it'd be really neat over the years to be able to start doing meetups and retreats and whatnot, even if they're not like formal weekend retreats that are like sign up and sort of a more formal process, but more of a, we're going to be here on these days and whoever wants to come and join us can, because to put faces and personalities and actually be in real time with one another is really, really, really special. So I think what we'll do next is we'll talk about my finished object, and it's a pretty quick share. This is Hyssop. So I've been talking about this for quite a while on the podcast. So actually, I'll just go to this for just a moment. This is the leftover yarn that I have from the project. I'll move my bobbins out of the way for just a sec. I don't know if anybody saw the email from Ply Magazine. If you did not get your issue of Prep, which is the winter 2019 issue, you need to get on a mailing list with Ply Magazine, and there's information in the most recent newsletter and also on the website, because they used a new plastic bag enclosure and the ink ran. So a lot of the addresses when they went out were undeliverable because of the ink that bled. So if you haven't received your Prep issue yet, please get in touch with Ply Magazine, because they have put a call out several times now asking people who haven't received their magazines to get in touch with them. Oh, wouldn't that be amazing, Meg, to go on a Shetland Wool Week together? We could travel all together from North America. That would be so cool. We could all meet up. That would be awesome. The retreat idea is one that's on Patreon. It's as people sign up and we hit different community milestones, the more people that we have in the community, the more realistic it is for us to start to organize some of that stuff. And I think our next one, our next milestone, if my memory serves, is 500, I think. 450. Travel to a specific location once a year to hang out. So we just hit our 300 patrons goal. So we're currently working toward 450. And, even if it's just, the Patreon, on Patreon, when you look at the different support tiers and pledges and stuff that you can do, if you don't want to pledge, say, $5 a month because you don't want to be part of the Slack channel or whatever, but you want to give like $1 or $2 a month, you can go on to Patreon and you can click on whatever it is that you want to support. So you can click join, say the $3 tier, for example, and say $3 isn't really what you want to spend per month. You can click on it And then you can actually go into, instead of writing, so it'll say choose what you want to pay. The minimum price for this tier is $3, but you can change it and put $2 or $1. And then when you hit confirm, it'll just say that you won't get those benefits of being part of that tier. But Woolen Spinning Radio and the monthly teaching content come out to no matter who, like if you're pledging at $1 a month or $50 a month, it doesn't matter. You get all of that content. So even if you don't, so if you go in and just choose whatever tier you want to be a part of, because the more people we have, the more realistic it is to do stuff like a retreat. So don't feel like you have to pledge what Patreon and what the tiers are set up to pledge. You can always, for any podcast, any Patreon creator, you can go in and pledge what you want to pledge. You just might not get those specific rewards at that tier, but if you don't care, because it's more about just supporting that creator, that's totally fine. Nora's over there. She's trying to figure out how to do stuff. Yeah, definitely, Natalie, make sure that you get on the list if you haven't received yours. We could book out a whole house in Shetland. Yeah, or a castle or a lighthouse. That would be amazing. Oh my gosh, can you imagine all of the woolen spinning crew in like one place? We'd never sleep. We'd be up like for like 96 hours straight. It would be amazing. So the reason why I went from here, I was going to show you the Hyssop and then I went to here, is because the Hyssop came from this book. I've talked about this on the podcast before. So this is the To the Point, the Knitted Triangle by Leila Raven. The shawl that I knit is actually this one here. It's a beautiful book. It's published by Quince and Company. And the shawl that I chose was this one here, the Hyssop. And I've shown it to you before. So I made some major modifications. So for those who haven't watched the podcast before, if you're a new viewer, welcome. I'll just very briefly tell you about this because I have talked about it before on the podcast. But if you've missed those episodes, I don't want you to miss out on what I did. So these are the photos of the shawl here. And it was knit in Osprey, which is an Aran weight yarn. It's a gorgeous, the photography in this book are really beautiful. That's it here. I love the models that they used. So as you can see, the shawl had these wrapped stitches and it was an atypical triangular design. So you would think from just glancing to the untrained eye that you cast on up here and you work your way down, slowly decreasing as you go. But that's actually not how the shawl is made. You actually cast on at the bottom here of the triangle. Right here where this wrap stitch is, you cast on there and you actually increase and work your way up the triangle. When you get to the top and when you're ready to cast off, you actually knit a few rows of garter stitch. And then once you cast off, I'm still fighting my cold. I'm still like, swollen and congested. And then you cast off and then you're supposed to lightly steam the shawl and then you pick up the remaining garter stitch border and work some increases at the point and also at the ends to make it work out, kind of thing. It's a beautifully written pattern. It's very, very simple, not difficult at all. The yarn that I used was from Kramer Yarns. It was a Merino Alpaca roving that I meant to bring down to show you what it was originally, but it was a gray color that they had blended from Merino and alpaca. And I had over-dyed it a few years ago with logwood. I feel like my camera today is really dark. Like I feel like this is registering really dark. The yarn is quite dark. And I ended up spinning it up as a 2-ply. So this is all that remains. And I had reclaimed this yarn from a vest that I had knit a few years ago that I just never wore. And so I had ripped it out, washed some of the yarn. Some of it I just left and knit with it as was on the shawl. So the major modification that I made was the fact that the yarn that I used, this yarn, is a sport weight, and I knit this shawl on 4mm needles. And in the pattern, it called for an Aran weight and 5.5 millimeter needles. So what I did was I basically threw stitch counts out the window, because as long as the repeatable chart was working out, I wasn't too concerned with how many actual physical stitches I had. And so I just kept increasing until I liked the size, and until I was getting to the point where I was like, yep, I'm getting close to running out of yarn. Like, I'm kind of at the point where I'm like, I'm happy to go to the border. And I finished up the border last show, or I was getting close to it, and I was going to show you guys what it looked like once I had cast off the upper border. I was going to give it a light steam, and then I was going to pick up the bottom border after today's show. But I got it done because we've had so many days at home and so many snow days that in the end I just decided to just finish it. So I decided to show you in photos rather than on my dress form. It's right here, because as you can see, even with all of the lights in here and even with adequate lighting, this yarn is so dark. And even though we've got snow outside and it's bright-ish, it's quite dark, so I'm not getting a lot of natural light either. It would be really hard to show this to you guys. So I thought that the photos would probably do the shawl justice. To wash and block it, because I had previously knit with this yarn, it was still a bit kinky. And with the alpaca and everything, I thought that once I skeined the yarn and washed it, that a lot of the kink and curl would come out of it. But it's funny because this skein is really, really good. Like, this is totally, obviously, very, very knittable yarn. I'll just switch the cameras for just a sec. You can see, though, that the yarn is a little bit kinky in places still from the knitting. And even though it washed up really well and it knit up really, and in the shawl it knit up beautifully, there are some places on the garter stitch, where even with the blocking and stuff, it didn't completely come out and isn't completely even, but over time that'll work itself out. The only thing about the shawl that I will say, it took a long time to dry. So even though I soaked it in hot water, it was hotter than I normally wash my stuff in, but it was because of the previously knit yarn, and the alpaca in there can handle that hot. I put it into a hot water bath, didn't agitate it. I had added some eucalyptus, and I just left it to soak for quite a long time. And I was hoping that would make the wrap stitches sort of even out and take out some of that kink and curl, and that's exactly what happened. So I was really happy about that. And then I towel dried it, and when I went to lay it out to block it, to get it to really open up, I used my blocking wires. And I don't normally pull out my blocking wires for something like this with garter stitch and whatnot, because I don't like the look of really stretched garter stitch. But to get the shawl to really lay out beautifully, it needed the blocking wires. So I did loop the blocking wires in along all 3 edges, and then I pinned them out to really stretch the shawl, and it just made the wrap stitches just really, it really perfected them, I think, and it made them really worth the extra effort of working them when you've got, like, that's really what the shawl is showcasing, is those wrap stitches. Like, when you look at the patterning and stuff, it's the wrap stitches that your eye goes to. And so to be able to have those even out and lay nicely and lay flat, it just makes the shawl look like it was really finished properly and not just left. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, the sport weight size, it's funny because, like, I do like the chunkier shawls, but normally here, when it's not minus 12 degrees, we don't need such big, chunky, heavy knits. And I wanted to use this yarn, and I wanted to really showcase this yarn. And of course, you guys know how much I sort of wax poetic about using our hand spun. And so I just thought, shawls are great for modifying gauge, because you don't have to have the right gauge on a shawl. As long as you can modify it enough, like in the sense that you can keep the stitch patterning going, or the shape of the shawl can grow enough to whatever size it is that you want the shawl, or if you're using a bigger yarn, that you can stop knitting prematurely so you can make a garment that's a little bit smaller, whatever it is that you're trying to do to modify, The nice thing is with shawls, they are very modifiable, and the gauge doesn't really matter as long as you know sort of approximately what size you want, and that the math will still work out, that it'll still make the right shape. I think that some of the shawls where it gets a bit more difficult to modify gauge and stitch and whatnot are some of the shawls that are built from the corner and then they're kind of built out like this. Sorry, I'm off the screen, where they sort of start at the point and they're kind of built out, where this one's quite a steep angle and this one's sort of a bit less, and you're building them out like this, and the shawl ends up with the long edge here. I know it's hard to explain that, but I find when I've played around with gauge with those shawls, they either end up too shallow and they end up too narrow, or they don't, and they just don't work out as well. But this worked out beautifully. They are very unique, you're right. I'll grab it off my dress form just to kind of show you guys an idea of size on me. It's the perfect size. So this, I'll just switch the camera for just a sec. So, and it really, oh, the smell, it's just gorgeous. It smells so nice. So this is probably how I would wear it. Yeah, it even goes with my shirt. I got this for Christmas. Yeah. Pretty good, eh? I love this shawl. I'm really happy with it. And you know what the nice thing is? Because it's sport weight yarn, it's not so heavy. Some of my shawls that are knit in, I call them my vanilla shawls. So there's no patterning to them. There's no lace stitches or anything. I can't believe it, you guys. The garbage truck is in our cul-de-sac. Oh my goodness, those guys look so cold. Sorry. You know when you're just knitting back and forth and you're doing the increases for a triangular shawl, and it kind of grows as it is, but they become quite dense shawls, and I love them, don't get me wrong, and I wear them a ton. But this here, for most of the year, is a really realistic shape and weight and size to wear, because I can even knot it underneath if I really want to. And then I can put my winter jacket on and wear it hanging out in front of my winter jacket. And the nice thing is, because of the alpaca, because it's 50-50 merino alpaca roving, and I spun this for a fiber review way back on the blog a few years ago. I think it was 20, have I told you guys already? In another podcast, I think I spun this yarn back in 2015, because originally it was going to be a 3-ply. And then I ended up doing a 2-ply because I wanted more yardage. Yeah, 2016 I did the review over the course of the summer for them. And I ended up with a total of 860 yards. And this is all I have left now. So that's pretty good. This used a lot of yarn. I haven't figured out how much I used and whatnot. I'll weigh it all and report back. I don't want to forget to do that, but oh, we have a lot of people watching today. I guess you guys are all home and around. That's awesome. I'm so glad. I think the consistency of streaming at the same time every week really makes a big difference. And you guys know that there will be a show every week, and unless you hear explicitly from me otherwise, then you know to expect a show, which is exactly what I was hoping for when we went to a weekly stream schedule. I feel like it's a little bit reminiscent of the show when I used to record it, and it would be between 15 and 25 minutes long, and I would record it, and I would try to record while the kids were sleeping, and I would talk really fast because I had all this stuff that I wanted to share, and I would release it weekly, and it would always be sort of while they were napping. And then I think that lasted for a while, that the show was weekly like that for a while. It was like through episodes like 30 through the 30s and 40s. And then I feel like we started to move toward the idea of like bi-weekly streaming, like every other week, sort of twice a month kind of thing. And then we started to get, and the Patreon started. And I remember a couple of people reaching out to me and saying that they really appreciated the show when it was a longer format, because they felt like sometimes we were talking about so many things and there was so much information they were trying to absorb that they just felt like it was just too fast, and they were actually using the speed controls on YouTube to actually physically slow me down so that I wasn't talking as fast. And I tend to talk fast anyways. Like in real life, I'm a fast talker. So on the podcast, I consciously try to slow myself down, which it's a double-edged sword, right? Because I slow myself down and then I start saying But I remember like doing the show weekly and producing these sort of shows that were roughly like 20 minutes long, because they were supposed to be short. They were supposed to be more like vlogs. And now we're kind of there again, and we're doing the weekly show, but having that consistency of streaming regularly and having that interaction with you guys, like I have not felt so inspired and excited about my making probably since before my dad got sick. Like how I feel right now. Like I have spun so much yarn. Like this is case in point. I'll switch the cameras. I have just been feeling so friggin' inspired. And I think a lot of it is because I know that I have that opportunity to interact with like-minded people regularly now, whereas before, like I missed it on the weeks off. I missed it when I didn't have a stream and I wasn't getting a chance to chat with you guys. So I hope you guys are excited as excited as I am. Now Wednesday is live stream day. That's awesome, Becca. I'm so glad. I'm glad that I get to be on people's calendars. And it's not me. It's like the community, you know, being able to showcase other people's projects. Actually, one thing I would love your guys' feedback on before we start chatting about this project is whether or not you guys would like to see, like what we do for breed and color studies, if you guys would like to see some of the stuff that you're working on for 51 Yarns, if you'd like to see that on the podcast. Because there are so many interesting things that you guys are working on, and we could spotlight like one, you know, we could even just do one person if people don't want that to be a big part of the show. And we could just sort of spot like, oh yeah, so-and-so is working on this month, and show kind of their process and what they're working on. Because what I really love about the 51 Yarns spin along, and Group B just started this month. So if you're interested, please hop on Patreon and the blog and everything and look at Group B, because they're just starting over this month. So you can start from the beginning if you've been hearing about it all this past year but haven't been able to be a part of it yet. There are people that are part of the Group A that have been doing this now for 13 months and working through their yarns and are being so incredibly thoughtful and methodical about how they're taking on the spin. They're spinning and they're learning, that if you guys want to hear about it on the podcast, I would love to showcase it here. And we could even do one from Group A and one from Group B. We have time because the show is weekly now. So... oh, yes, please. Okay, great, Eve. Awesome. Well, and if that would keep you guys motivated too, because I know for some of you, after a few months, it's hard to keep up with a spin along that's intense, like the 51 Yarns. Like the 51 Yarns book there's a lot of yarns in there. It's 51 yarns. Our spin along is ooh, just banged my knee. Sorry, you guys. Big shake. The 51 Yarns spin along is based on JC Boggs Faulkner's book, 51 Yarns. You don't need to buy the book to be a part of the spin along, but I would highly recommend it. It's a great book. And for Group A, who've been working now for 13 months, this is their 13th month. They're going into 14 months in February. We're currently looking at coils and core spun and super coils. And Group B is at the beginning. And they're looking at wool class, and they're currently looking at medium and fine wools and discussing whether or not they agree with medium wools being a classification of wool. I personally do. I think it's helpful. It puts fibers like Polworth and Corriedale and finer fin, and it just gives them a place to go. But yeah. So Group A, Group B, and then we also have the Zero to Hero spin along going. So I'll talk about that in a minute after we talk about this spin. So this spin, I've got the singles done, and they have been, oh, sorry guys. They have been sitting here on my table, waiting to be dealt with. They've been very patient, and they have not been complaining at all. They've just been sitting here quietly, like good little bobbins. These are my Magicraft Susie bobbins, and I actually bought them from a lady at Guild. She had 3 of them, and she had a little Magicraft gem, and she sold it because she bought a, oh, what did she buy? What's the one that you can put the that comes with the overdrive head? The other wheels you have to add the overdrive head, but it's the one that you can actually order with the, I think the Aura, the Magicraft Aura. Anyways, her little gem, she had it all done in this color. And so she had these really cool bobbins, and she was selling it all. And so I bought them from her. I've got 3 of them. It's not my color, but to be honest with you, I do love having the extra bobbins because Magicraft bobbins are expensive. Now I'm getting too hot. Alpaca is so warm. Oh my gosh, I love it. And I'm also a little bit sensitive to it, so I can feel myself getting a bit congested. More so than I already am. I'm sure you guys can hear that my voice isn't really quite what it normally is. I'm glad you guys want to see the 51 yarn samples. That's really great. I'm really glad. So we will start doing that next show. The yeah, so I've got these bobbins from Christine and Guild, and I spun, I think I talked about this last show. I had taken the braid of fiber, and I had actually I don't have a photo of the fiber. Do you guys want to see a photo of the fiber? Because I can pop one up. If you guys would like to see one, I can do it now. And I had taken it all, and I started to divide it, and I started to split it. And unfortunately, what happened was, as I was splitting it and as I was taking it apart, it started to just drift apart. And this is a Merino alpaca come on up. It's being shy. Move to the top. Come on. There we go. There it is. This is the original braid. So it's a merino, it's alpaca merino silk. And I don't have the ratios with me, but I can't remember if it's, I think it was 40, anyways, quite a high alpaca blend. So I was a bit nervous about spinning it because I thought for sure that I was going to start having an allergic reaction. So I was taking a sip of my coffee, and then it almost came out my nose. Diane's like, the next tier after 450, 2-hour live streams to cover all these great subjects. Okay, if we get to 500, I will live stream for 2 hours once a week, plus the wool stream, and we'll increase the wool stream in the length of time too, because I always find that's not long enough. And I will do this full time. Like, I will leave nursing and I will do this full time. Honest to goodness, you can hold me to that, because this is what I love to do. So the braid was, so as you can see, the braid was just these beautiful jewel tones. And this was a colorway that was developed by SweetGeorgia Yarns called Falling Leaves. And they put it together for the UK's Spin Together event that they had back in the fall, because Spinzilla wasn't running this year for the first time in 2019. And so I started to split it and to take it apart, and it just started to drift apart. And I think because it's a commercially prepared comb top, which is a lot of what I work with, like, I'll be honest, I do work with a lot of commercial comb top. Even though this has been hand dyed, a lot of these fibers in this comb top would have been cut. And so I think because the staple length, and I did show this last show, they're quite short. As I started to take it apart, and you have to remember that the alpaca and the silk, doesn't have any scales, right? So there's nothing for them to grab onto their neighbors with. And I don't know if the merino is 100% merino or if it's superwash merino. I think it's regular merino. I don't think it's superwash because there is sort of a sponginess to the fiber. Like, you know how superwash merino is a lot smoother and it just kind of drifts and glides apart? This is a little bit more toothy, but not coarse at all. It's not coarse or unpleasant at all. It's very, very soft. But I think the fibers, there's just nothing for them to grab onto. And so as soon as I started to split it and divide it, it just started to drift everywhere. And the funny thing is the Gotland, same colorway, which is here. I'll just move my bobbins. Because as beautiful and as patient as they are, they don't have to be front and center. The Gotland, because it's a long wool, and I've got this all prepped to spin on the with the distaff next. So this is going on the wheel next. If I really pre-drafted this a lot and really started to play with it a lot, it was the same thing. It was drifting apart. So as I was attenuating this and pre-drafting it and getting it ready to spin, I was just adding a little twist to it just to hold it together. And it really worked well. And this was a little trick that I got from my friend Kim McKenna years ago. And she reminded me of it a little while ago. And I just was like, oh yeah, of course. Like, why have I not been doing that this whole time? But you know how you learn stuff and it kind of, you use it for a bit and then you move on to other things and you sort of forget about it. That was sort of what had happened. And so when I was pre-attenuating, getting this ready, I thought, oh, I'll do the same thing with this spin. And I'll pre-attenuate it, pre-draft it, and kind of give it a bit of a twist. Well, it would have worked. I don't think it would have worked with this fiber for me personally. Maybe somebody else will have really good results. But I found just the more I split it, the worse the whole thing was going. So what I ended up doing was I split the fiber in half. And then with each, I sort of separated each half. And then each half I split twice more to give me 3 big nests of fiber, and I just spun them from the top end to end, drafting really short, keeping my distance to draft really short. It was about 1 inch, and just, you know, draw back, smooth, draw back, smooth, draw back, smooth. It was almost like a glorified short forward draw. And what resulted was this really beautiful worsted spun yarn. This is where my bigger camera is actually a little bit better to show you guys this kind of stuff. Like, look at the sheen on there. All that snow is reflecting off of it. It's lots and lots of sheen. There you go. Now you can really see it. And it's very smooth. But because the alpaca, it's still got that little bit of a fuzz to it. So these very patient and kind bobbins who've been sitting here for over the weekend and now into this week, because I haven't had a chance to get anything done. Have I mentioned that? I just am waiting to rewind them. So I don't want to ply them from the last spun end. I want to ply them from the first spun end, because I went to all that effort of keeping them very worsted. And I think these singles, the yarn just in general, is going to end up a little bit more dense than I would normally spin my yarns. And some of that's the heaviness of the alpaca. Some of that's just the way that I spun it. And I think it'll be a really beautiful yarn when it's done. There will be some barber poling. I did spin each of the nests end to end in the same color sequence. So there should be lots of areas of the yarn where the colors do match up. But it's sort of what I would call a traditional 2-ply, in that you've taken the braid, you've split it a few times, you've spun it end to end, and now you've gone to ply it. And so there will be a little bit of barber poling where the colors are a bit mismatched. The fibers maybe a bit more in one area, a bit less in another. So you get a bit longer of a color repeat in one area, and then a little bit more color and a bit longer length in another area because there's more fiber left there. I wasn't scientific about how I divided up my fiber. So I think because of that, I'm just going to end up with a really lovely 2-ply. Now, what I did do, and I left it in the other room, and that was totally my fault, is I do have a sample of yarn. I did a ply back test. So a ply back is where you pull your single off of your bobbin and you ply it back on itself to give yourself an idea of what your plied yarn is going to look like. So you want to do that with pulling it off the bobbin, because twist is still added all the way up until your yarn actually physically wraps onto your bobbin. When I'm just spinning and I want to just check my yarn and I just want to make sure that I'm kind of in the vicinity of what I'm supposed to be spinning, I won't pull it off the bobbin. I'll just let it go into the orifice of the wheel a little bit, and then I'll pull it back and ply it back. But that's not what your yarn is going to look like when you ply it. So I added a bit more twist. Sorry about that. I added a bit more twist and I put it onto the bobbin, and then I pulled it off, and I do have that sample for when I go to ply this, because now these have been sitting here for quite a few days. So they're going to not be quite the same. The singles are rested. So I need to have that sample to compare against so that I know what I'm plying to. I love that you guys are talking about boucle yarns, and that this is going to get you guys get you going for doing your boucle so that you'll be on the podcast. I love that. That's just, to me, that's just awesome. 24/7 Rachel, awesome. Oh, that'd be amazing. Yeah, you know, it's I'm always so torn about what to do with my nursing career, because I have my master's degree and I've got a lot of additional education, but I feel like this work is so meaningful in connecting community together and helping to build community. And for so many people in our community, you know, this is their sort of network to the outside world for a variety of reasons. There's people living with chronic illness, disability. They live in more isolated rural areas, and getting on the internet is their way of being able to connect with others. Many of us are introverts, and so being a part of a really big group of people and going out to something isn't necessarily our idea of a great time. So when we interact with an online community, we can interact on our own terms, and when we're feeling like we have the energy to give to others. There's just so many amazing things about serving a community like this. So I just feel really blessed that I'm able to do that. Oh, that's nice of you, Karma. Thank you so much. All right. You're right, Diane. I'll absolutely know when it's time to make a change. Yeah, I have to be pragmatic. You know, I've got to be somewhat practical about stuff too. So I have this colorway to spin for this project, and then I have the Targhee to spin for this project. So I've got 3 different colorways to spin. And actually, if you guys are curious, I'll put up a photo if I can find it. Now that I'm promising, I might not be able to find it. Shoot. Oh, here it is. I found it. It's like it was meant to be. Okay, so these are the 3 colorways. So so this project is it's going to be a weaving project. It's for the School of SweetGeorgia. So the one directly below me, so the same colorway, it's all the falling leaves. So the same colorway, this one is Gotland. The one in the middle, that's kind of the medium one, is the Superwash Targhee. And then the one at the very end is the Alpaca Merino silk. So what SweetGeorgia did when they designed the colorway and when they put them on the 3 different bases, was basically to showcase, like, look at how different the dyes take the different fiber. And I love the difference between the 3. What's been really fun for me in designing such a big project, because this is over 300 grams of fiber, it works out to about 345 grams of fiber. So 3 4-ounce braids. What's been really cool for me is figuring out how to spin them, and then from there figuring out, okay, if I'm going to spin them this way, how is that going to affect the colorway for each braid, and then also next to one another. So my plan at the moment is to do a faux plaid, and I'm going to use the Gotland to sort of divide up the faux plaid so that you've got the basically the darker Gotland anchoring the squares of the plaid, and then I'm going to use the Targhee, the medium, as right next to the Gotland on either side, just like this actually, and then the Alpaca Merino silk in the middle, sort of as the light, and the warp will be that, and then the weft will mirror the warp. And I'm hoping that we can show sort of how to weave up these 3 different colorways, 3 different fibers, but are linked because they're the same colorway, if that makes sense. So they're all going to be spun as a 2-ply, and they're all going to be spun a little bit higher twist than I normally would spin, especially the Gotland, just so they can withstand the tug of the floor loom. So yeah, I think it'll be really cool. It'll be really fun. It's kind of like my own color study, but it's also kind of a breed study because it's all 3 different fibers. So it's been kind of fun that way. And it's neat. It's nice to be able to share with you guys because it's not like it's this big secret. Kind of like the socks, it's sort of like trickling out some of the content as we go, which is really fun. I love sharing my process with you guys. Okay. I think that is everything for today. I am losing my voice. I'm actually really surprised that I'm losing my voice, but I seem to be losing my voice. It's fading as I talk to you. And I did make some progress on my Copenhagen. I was going to share that with you very, very, very briefly. But I'm really liking how it's knitting up. There's a certain homogeny to it now that I've made some more progress. And I'm still going 2 by 2. So, yeah, not bad, not bad. I haven't made any life-altering changes or decisions, about the shifty pullover, but I will. And I have a pile of packages here that are shipped. They're labeled and they are sealed. So for Ingrid Eileen Ply Magazine, which is completely unrelated, and Candy, I have 3 packages that are going out to you guys. I just haven't, to be honest with you, I haven't been able to get to the post office. I can't put them in our post box at the end of the street because it only takes envelopes. And I need to be able to send this in the big boxes, like where you can actually pull the thing and put the package in. So that's coming. Do you weavers ever change up your direction of twist for weaving yarn? I haven't played with that yet, Charlotte, but that is something that I would like to do. The only thing that I was wondering about, and I'd love to hear Erica's comments about this actually. I think you would probably want to make sure that your yarns are spun in the same direction for the same project. So I was sort of wondering about that because I don't know if you would want to have, but then I also was like, well, why would it matter? Because once they're finished, if they're balanced, then it shouldn't matter which way they were spun. So yeah, more to come on that conversation. All right. Yeah, you're right, Marla. I will use my nursing throughout my life. It's funny with the kids being so sick last week, and I did take Nora into our GP to get, so for those who don't know what a GP is, a family doctor, I did take her into our GP to get her swabbed for strep because she had been exposed, and for quite a long time she had been exposed, and him and I were chatting about it and whatnot, and he agreed with me that she should be swabbed, and we both also agreed that she probably didn't have strep because she had a couple of symptoms that weren't consistent with strep. And so when I was telling him why I thought that it was probably a prudent and good idea to get her swabbed, I always feel like because I worked Emerge for so many years, I feel like that knowledge will always serve me well, I know when I need to ask for help. I know when I'm out of my depth in terms of needing our family doctor or needing Emerge or whatever, but I also feel like I've got a lot of like tricks up my sleeve, like tepid baths for fevers and not layering the kids up when they're hot, and how to dose Tylenol, you know what I mean? Like all those little things that you learn. So yeah, it totally is, Kelly. It's a breed and color study. Oh, the ancient Egyptians would twist linen in one direction, then the other, then stripe them for texture. That is such a cool idea because I could totally see how in the finished fabric, because I think the Egyptians worked a lot with just linen singles. Like a lot of history of weaving is singles because they didn't have time to get all this stuff plied, and they were making a 3-dimensional fabric anyway, so they would leave stuff as singles, and that would really add texture for sure. That would be like a pattern, a way to kind of create patterning without affecting the integrity of the fabric. Yeah. So true, Greta. Yeah. Whole identity shift when it comes to changing careers. It's so true, Greta. Oh, and Greta, I got your email about the shift. So thank you about the shifty and your experiences. So thank you so much. I just haven't had a chance to respond. For anybody who has sent me a message, especially on Patreon, and I haven't written back to you, it's just because I'm trying to play catch up. This month has been very disjointed with kids home so much, with sickness and then me getting sick and then the snow day on Monday and then a snow day today. It's been very, very odd. Very odd start to the new year. I think that's everything in terms of the show. If you would like to get a copy of the How I Spin a Sock Study soft cover, it is available indefinitely on the Blurb website, and it is linked down below in the show notes. Show notes are available at patreon.com/wellforpearls. They are also available on wellforpearls.com if you'd like to just look at the blog, and you can follow the blog. I've spent quite a bit of time updating the index and making sure that our index remains up to date. It is a working document, so if there's something that you're looking for and it's not there, please let me know, but I'm pretty sure everything is there. It does link you back to Patreon posts, so please make sure you are signed in so that you can access the content that you have access to. Some of the content you won't have access to if you're not at certain support tiers. And you can always move your support tiers around, throughout the months, depending on what you want for that time. And the ebook of the How I Spin a Sock Study will be available as a special offer for certain Patreon peers going forward. Or tiers going forward. So sometimes it'll be part of the wool stream. Sometimes it'll be part of the Attentive Spinner. Sometimes it'll be part of the Lifelong Spinner. I'm just going to keep moving it around every month. And you just watch for it. You'll see it when you go on Patreon. I think that's everything. If you are interested in receiving the newsletter, which I actually have not written and will not have not gotten out for this month yet. It only goes out once a month. Just gives you an overview of what's going on at Wool and Spinning. You can go to wellforpearls.com. I think that's everything for today. We don't really need to go on and on. We've got a wool stream coming up on Tuesday morning, and then we're back with the podcast next Wednesday. I'm hoping that I have some more finished yarns to show you because I have a couple of things on the wheel, and I'm going to finish up the Polworth silk that I found last week for my shift cardigan and for my shift sweater. I'm not sure what I'm going to do about that knit yet. So until next time, happy spinning, happy knitting, happy weaving, happy all the things. I hope you are warm and cozy wherever you are. And until next time, stay safe and stay warm. Bye, everyone.